Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and today I'm going to do a story about Dr. Doom and his many Doom bots, right? And some of the stories where they actually played to the Doom bots, right? So instead of shrieking at the idea that who is a Doom bot, which one is it? We're going to go through some of the things that kind of led to there being Doom bots, and I think they've been kind of retired since people like John Byrne, Walter Simonson, Roger Stern, the ones that would kind of play around with the Doom bots and kind of utilizing Doom's use of subterfuge as a part of his character. You see these books behind me. Around the time John Byrne was about to get on the book, who was it? Marv Wolfman was kind of off the Fantastic Four, and they were kind of putting Doom back together so he could be this major character. At the same time, once Doom was free from the story that happened in FF200, I guess I should just show that to you. All right, so here is FF200. Now, during this period, you had the writer-editor period. And this was written by Marv Wolfman. He picked up a story. It's pretty much majorly a Reed story. I started talking about this Reed story where Reed goes through all of these struggles with his powers and his abilities, but he gets him back into this big brawl with Dr. Doom in 200. And at this time, Doom had already been in, he'd been in supervillain team up. He'd been in the Avengers, obviously the Fantastic Four, and people were constantly asking for Doom. And Marv Wolfman said, I have to do this story with Doom first, then you can have him, right? So basically, we had this big brawl in Latveria. Reed and Doom had their seemingly fight to the finish, and Reed finds a way to defeat Doom, and Doom is catatonic after this portion, right? So after that, Doom should have been being used, but he was catatonic. So while Marv Wolfman was away, they figured a way to get Doom loose, and right around that time, John Byrne was on the title. So we got our backdrop. I've already talked to you about FF5 where the Doom bots were introduced. The time Byrne was doing it, he utilized Doom in the 20th anniversary. It's not shown here. I guess I can show it. This issue is one of Byrne's best issues of the run. So in this issue, the 20th anniversary, which to Byrne was the FF the movie, he decided to have this big story, which is where they would ultimately wind up having to deal with Doom in this issue, right? So what else do you do in the 20th anniversary but have them fight the most major villain that they've been fighting since issue 5? And he's the basis for so many Marvel villains, maybe even Darth Vader, right? So at the same time Byrne was getting on it, Jim Shooter had kind of released Dr. Doom. And Byrne was okay because he was constantly, him and I guess Claremont at different points, they would ask for villains and they'd always be tied up and that sort of thing through the writer-editor thing. So when Shooter released Doom and Byrne was on the FF, at the same time, everyone else started using Doom. We got the X-Men 145 to 147. We had Iron Man 149 to 150. And Dazzler 3 and 4 came out this around the same time as FF236, right? So even though Byrne felt, hey, the kids can figure out how this character could be in Justice League and in Superman at the same time, this was a little overkill. So ultimately, like you can see in the backdrop of my picture, the editor decided he wanted to do a gag cover, pointing out that Doom was not in this issue. So this kind of gave us to kind of explain how could he be in so many books at the same time. And if you ran into a lame one that got beat up by Daredevil, you could just say it was a Doom bot, right? So ultimately, it was a while before Byrne actually revealed. It was almost a year before he revealed any specific one was a Doombot, right? So it wasn't. So while Byrne was doing his early FF run, this X-Men issue came out, right? And it was a 3-part story where Doom and Arcade team up to deal with the X-Men, and they do so. Even though the X-Men deal with a lot of Doom's robots, the X-Men are completely defeated, and Arcade and Doom are kind of together. And this leads to one of the bigger controversies during the period, right? Because this story, even though the art is amazing and Doom is really great in this first issue, there's a point where I should have it queued up, but there's a point in the story where Arcade strikes a match on Doom, and in Byrne's issues and in the Iron Man issues, Doom really doesn't like the idea of anyone touching him. But this kind of thing where Doom says he pities Arcade, kind of out of character for Doom. But Byrne didn't really deal with it. But it came into some other conflict later where Claremont kind of criticized the storyline of his within the comic book. So as Byrne established the Doombots, we have this classic issue here, right? Where we get to see Doom at home doing this thing, and we see the Doombots, and Byrne decides that the X-Men Doom was a Doombot, right? And to many fans, this was a tougher thing to take, that he would kind of nix the story, that it would be made that, oh, that makes it a fake story since it wasn't the real Doom. But I'm going to show you how it doesn't have to be taken in all the way the bad way that it is. And ultimately, Byrne has turned a lot of his post-FF Doom stories into Doombot stories, right? And it's a game that you can play that anyone can play, right? And the Doombots show up a few times. Doom appears in such a way that he can appear in the book. He appears in the books in many ways. Sometimes his presence is felt by the FF. There's a lot of ways that he appears. But the last thing before I get to some of the stories that were revealed to have Doombots were, what is it? Now, I know Byrne gets a lot of flack for doing that to Claremont's story. But in this issue 350, Walter Simonson decided that there was even more bad Doom stories. And especially everything since Byrne with Englehart. I guess we'll have to go back to it, right? So I guess I'll go back to this bit. But keep this issue in mind. This is where a lot of everything post-Byrne was considered a Doombot. Like, he nixed the entire thing because the Steve Englehart period, Doom is looking for people to help him get back Latveria. And a lot of writers really didn't agree that Doom would be going around trying to struggle to get his land back, right? So we have many issues. So this issue's a Doombot, retconned into a Doombot. This issue, he's a Doombot. I think he was in West Coast Avengers. And we're going to do a key storyline that showed, but he was actually revealed to be a Doombot during the story. So this is a period from, let's see, I guess it'd be around 300 to I guess it's 350, right? So it's like, it would be, that's over, how many years is that? That's a 4-year period. A 4-year period where wherever he appeared during this time, this issue decides he was a Doombot, and many more, right? Basically, Walter Simonson kind of had it that Doom hasn't appeared in the book for a very long time. Possibly the last time he showed up was around, he showed up definitely in FF40, but after that part, it's give and go. Now, there's issues where Doom is injured, right? He's catatonic after 200. He's in so there's a period where we don't know. I think the next time next time we know he appears would be he can definitely appears as 358 or 258, where we have him at Latveria because we see Doom walking around and all that stuff. And so that one into 260, but then his body is incinerated. So we have the idea that that was Doom and he turns into a human, but there's a gray area to how Doom got to the Secret Wars, because this story here could possibly nix Doom being in the Secret Wars, right? But it's not. I don't have it as a Doombot Secret Wars as a Doombot story because it wasn't clear. So you have the Englehart run that's been officially retconned as a Doombot. The X-Men story, which has been turned as a retcon and a Doombot. But now we'll get to the official story. So we're going to go through, I guess we have to go through importance, right? Because it'd be easier to kind of go from importance, right? So we have this issue here, which is FF number 5, right? And we see Doom at a distance away from the FF. So some secret location. And the way the story plays out is Doom is this elusive person, right? And he tasks the FF after he captures their building, captures the Invisible Girl. They have to go on this adventure through time to get this gold and whatnot. And some Blackbeard's treasure. And then when they come back, they think they're about to fight Doom, and it's a robot. And he's, of course, tucked away, and he decides he's going to kill the FF, as you can see in this scene. But Sue saves them, and Doom escapes at the end. So, and this is an issue that I think this is Byrne's first issue. It influenced him. It was one of his favorite books. I think he said he saw one before it, and what's the name of it? That's neither here nor there. So this got like the daddy of the Doombot stories, right? So now that I did that, I just want to get an offbeat one off the table, right? And I guess I would go through some of these. Anyone wanted me to go through them? Okay, so here we have a battle between Reed and Doom through time. Now this is an offbeat one because we see here we have a time. There's a timestamp at the bottom of the image, and on the right side of the page, I think I can show you if I open this up. I think if I open this up, it'll work, right? Yeah, so you see there's a timestamp on the right side of the page, and it's an all-out battle between Reed and Doom. I showed you 200, so at 352, they have another big battle. It's just the two of them, and it's a battle through time. You can see just a glimpse of it. The corner has that, but you see them battling it out. Oh, that page, a lot of ads, right? But you see in the corner, you have now they've developed, after the first thing, it's on the left side of the page, and where they're fighting, the time is on the right side of the page. So that's a more accurate assessment. So it's one of the more fun battles between Doom and Reed. Very, very different from 200. And at the same time, to spoil it, Doom switches himself out with another Doom someone else in his place, but it's not an actual robot, but I'll leave that for you to find out. So it kind of plays to that Doom isn't necessarily interested in getting into a big brawl with Reed. So it kind of says that 200 wouldn't have happened because Doom isn't really interested in fighting anybody like that. After being humiliated by the Thing, he's not really interested in getting into a big brawl with anybody. He's above all of that. He's a ruler. So I don't like the idea that 200 is a Doombot. But if we go to the idea that Doom, even though he is a tough guy, he's not really someone that would get into a fight. But at the same time, the fights with him are cool, so I would like to keep it on the table. So we did two. We did the first, we did that. I did a review of Avengers 1.5, and it's one of my favorite books. And it has Doom, and Doom defeats the Avengers at first, but there's a thing that was there's a portion that's underestimated, which is the Wasp and Ant-Man, and they're able to help. So this one of Roger Stern's does a really great story. It's great art by Bruce Timm. I know he did a few Batman things, but he was drawing again on this issue, and it's a real fun issue. But it's revealed that it's a Doombot, and the Avengers are like, have we even run into the real Doom in this story? And he said, you'll never know. So we have Byrne, Simonson, Stern, all playing with the Doombots in great stories that are some of the more memorable stories out there. What other story do I want to go to? The full story didn't play out the way it should have. I'm going to go to this story here. Now, this was Howard Mackey was writing it. I think Byrne may have added some stuff to the story, but I think I've had to show this one. I mean, this thing, if you were a Byrne fan from the 70s, and this artwork is not as clean as the work you've seen in as I was saying, this stuff isn't as slick as the stuff we've seen Byrne do in the 80s or by the inkers that Byrne worked with in the 70s. But if you see what he's doing, it's disregard the computer effects at the bottom, right? The heat that's coming up from the bottom of it. Someone finally utilizing Photoshop. But we're going to go through this one just to kind of show you not only where Byrne came from, but where he went to at this part, right? So we have a quick scene with Aunt May, where he's about to go out to Latveria, where she's worried about him. And the bank is calling, but Spider-Man hitches a ride to Latveria. And it's like, looking from the angle that Byrne choose for this, right? You got the plane and the small wide as it get closer. You see him and how he would stow away on the plane. And as the plane starts to land, he's about to jump off, right? So this sort of angle, I'm sorry, I had to do it, right? And this is inked by the great Dan Green, who was much looser than he was in the 70s. But at the same time, I think it adds to the stuff. It's a lot more fun, right? I really like the stuff in the 70s, but it's good to see. I'm just happy to see the two of them back together. And it seemed like they've worked together. Somehow they found a way to work together after all this time. So he's trying to find his wife in this story because she had a modeling gig out in Latveria. And it's like they're bringing back some cheese while she was going there, and he thinks that she might have been extracted and brought to Latveria, right? So, and this is why I brought you here, right? Because Byrne has done Latveria many a time, but in having Spider-Man go to Latveria, you can get to these really cool angles that we've never seen Byrne do, right? And with Shooter not there to say, hey, we need this box, this thing should be straight, and we get to see an angle, the widest angle that we can get for Doom's castle. So it's really ominous, right? And at the same time, I'm not going to show you the issue after this, but because it kind of falls flat. Obviously, Spider-Man had to win, but it was great seeing Spider-Man go to Latveria and being a person out of his element. One of the things that's kind of lost in Spider-Man is that he's always able to handle whenever he gets to somewhere else. He has a hard time with the sound of the alarms that he set off. He didn't know he set up these alarms. These Doom robots, they're all new ones coming in, but he is going to figure out what's going on, right? And as he's going in, they're not actually after him. It's after these people, these rebels, this new rebellion against there, and they're getting taken out. But Spider-Man noticed, hey, this is rebellion. I gotta go out. I can help out, right? So Spider-Man goes in, helps these guys out, and slips out also, right? So at the same time, they capture someone, and this is the other cool part. Like, this never happens. Like, Spider-Man gets stopped by this neural shock, right? And Doom comes in, his presence is felt. So it's one of the things that you don't really get in a Spider-Man story. We see Spider-Man in trouble. They don't, and even though Spider-Man is able to escape and run away, but this is what I'd rather have him do than to be toe to toe and say, let me cut loose. Like, the idea is, like, if I cut loose, I can take everybody out. So, and then we get to the subplot of the rebellion, right? She saw them helmets, so she hides Spider-Man, right? And she hears the heroes, she believes in them, and what's funny is that Spider-Man's going in, and he's thinking, he doesn't have any plan, but obviously he wants to go to confront Doom. So this other thing that we got to see, a person burning doing these great castles during this period. This is why I wanted to bring you guys in here, because you get to really feel Spider-Man fighting a Doombot and not just a lame one, right? So Spider-Man's dodge, and this guy is of course extreme. And what happens? He's able to seemingly stop Dr. Doom. He try to pull off his mask, but he realized that it's a Doombot, and then the head is still talking, right? And then Doom is still attacking, right? And then he picks up his head and he knocks Spider-Man out of the castle, right? And of course, Spider-Man now has a plan. But it was a very simple story that comes up next. Ultimately, he wants to reveal to these people that this is not actually Doom, it's a Doombot, so then they get the heart to stop him. Which is not really the best kind of Doombot stories, but this one was a lot of fun. I like that Spider-Man was kind of knocked out of this thing. He was out of his element the entire time, right? So I think I've covered three. So since I only covered three, let's do another one. So our close end, Spider-Man fighting Dr. Doom, right? And this issue doesn't do the subterfuge that Doom doesn't appear. He just has, well, I guess it does. They have a bit of subterfuge in this storyline. But Spider-Man thinks he's got Doom, but it actually is a robot, and it switches. So I'll fit in two Spider-Man stories. I've also, I have to do another one. So we got this one. We also have this one here. This is a major Doom bot story by Byrne, where Doom's body's been destroyed. Doom is seemingly here, right? Jerry Ordway doing inks at this period. The Doom bots realize that Doom has been slain, so Doom has left them with an odd thing to take care of. They misinterpret what Doom wanted, so their idea to keep him sort of remembered is to put his memories into a kid, which is not what he planned. It was their interpretation of his plans. So they basically made Kristoff into, and yeah, it's good that I did this one, because the Doombots made Kristoff into, and we get the history of Doom in this one. So this Doombot story kind of gives you everything you want. They come with a crazy cockamamie plan. They also make Kristoff into this major villain that almost defeats the FF, like really close to it, utilizing one of Doom's old plots, and this time it works out, right? So I gave you that. And the last thing I wanted to do, because I wanted to get another Byrne one in there, because it shows you post Byrne doing the FF. I don't believe that he actually used the real Doom in any of his stories. I think every time he used them after that, he was a Doombot. So I'm going to share with you another screen, right? So this is a major crossover. This is like, there was a book called Bring On the Bad Guys. This is a simulation of that, where all the bad guys get together and they decide to send out different villains that the heroes have never faced to kind of throw them off guard. while they implement this big plan at the same time, which would be called the Acts of Vengeance, right? They finally get their vengeance in here. We have Doom and all this. We have many Doom stories in this one. Like right before this happens, we have this story here where Doom fights Thor and Hercules. Now, if you remember, said every Doom story during this period is a Doom bot. But this one hasn't been revealed, but I'm sorry, Walter Simonson has retconned this issue as a Doom bot. So it's a fun story, there's some great art, some Kirby homages. Dr. Doom goes back to Latveria and he almost defeats his archenemy, Kristoff, but he doesn't. But we start, even this part, this Doom starts the acts of vengeance. This is where it all starts. It starts with Doom. So it's one of those things where it's like, you mean that all these are, this is all a Doom bot? And I say yes, right? So let's get into the acts of vengeance, because I just want to show you what Doom's presence could be even though he's not there, right? So I showed you the Spider-Man. Just gonna show you the first Avengers one. And Doom places the first attack on the Avengers Hydro base. Now, the Avengers are spread out. So Doom has the idea, since their major attack is on the Avengers, due to Loki kind of cajoling these villains, Doom sends his robots to the Avengers Hydro base. I'm not supposed to do this. Stop. So, since Loki's cajoled all these villains to attack the heroes, we see on this cover that Doom's Ultimate Destroyer robots have decided to come and they're just destroying the Avengers Hydro base, right? So we start with the great Paul Ryan, who also passed. We have the Avengers staff, right? So the Avengers staff is just making sure everything's going well on the Hydro base, right? And Peggy Carter. Peggy Carter actually shows up in here. Someone from Wakanda. Madaka is there. So it's a bunch of, like, they were really, it's interesting that Byrne is really giving, I mean, I know they were established, giving a lot of character to the staff that was on the Avengers Astro base. And we have here, so Loki is seemingly like this mystical underling, and it's kind of helping the villains, but each villain thinks that they're the one. It's like Loki's playing the Don King to the supervillains, making them all believe that they're getting 5 million and 5, but the other people only getting 5 million, right? So we have Doom there, and when he comes in there, who's being manipulated? Oh, the crime fighters, of course. And it's a funny bit where they still think that they're all running the show, and they can't not show their powers. And Doom has already set things in motion, right? So right here, you see the Doom's robots. That's from, like, I think it's FF86. They come and they start destroying the Hydro base, right? And it's good that Byrne had set up the kind of cast that are here, because now we can worry about them. Not to say no one else did, but there's a battle suit, a wacky battle suit, and the Avengers crew try to defend the crew. Here's a subplot with Star Fox, and we see Nebula, the stacked Nebula from back in the comics, and we see the robots kind of taking the Avengers crew to task. They're almost finished here. There's not much life in them, right? But we see it also sinking, right? So Quasar's there to help them out, right? And we start to see the robots are retreating, but they're losing at the same time, right? And they're going to get back, trying to communicate it, but the robots are getting in there. And then now they're fully retreating, but we see, just like the Titanic, the island is sinking, right? And Quasar is playing, using his power to keep them up. There's nothing they can do. And they say, uh-oh, why would they retreat at this period? Well, we see the flammable jet fuel, and there's a bomb set on it. It was all a distraction to destroy the Hydro base, and they succeeded perfectly, right? Quasar is able to save most of them, it seems. Jarvis, we see the Acts of Vengeance have a major victory on their hands. They destroyed the Avengers island, right? The Hydro base. We're just going to jump forward. There's a couple of fun scenes, but ultimately I wanted to get to a scene where during this time of the Acts of Vengeance, there's this protest going on at the same time. So I forgot how involved the Acts of Vengeance was. I read all of the main issues, but the Avengers and West Coast Avengers, I read the X-Men also. I saw Children of Thor issues with the Juggernaut. It's probably one of the few crossovers that I read a lot of the crossovers, right? So the Avengers of Park was attacked. Jarvis is running from their underground location that they have left. But they finally realize they're being attacked and there's someone behind all of this. But then we have the Mandarin who takes a step out from the X-Men storyline. And he's causing mayhem at this Avengers thing, right? And Doom is not happy with the Mandarin and utilizing his power. And then we have the Red Skull kind of trying to calm down Doom, but it doesn't necessarily work. Doom doesn't even want him to be touched, and he knocks him away. But you have to remember that Red Skull now has Captain America's strength and abilities. So he flips over, uses his gun, and he shows Doom. We see him get felded by the Red Skull, right? So see the Avengers trying to gather stuff from the Hydro base, or what's left of it, and they realize the Mandarin is there, right? So the Avengers go after, and also we have the Wizard, right? And the Wizard, this is possibly outside of the X-Men, these two are finally getting to show what they can do, right? The Wizard does some cool stuff in here. We got this nice scene with even though Tom Palmer was a little heavy-handed with the inks, you could see all of Paul Ryan's women are stacked except for Agatha Harkness. And the Magneto shows up, right? This is a cool scene. So we can keep going. This does not have to do with Doom. We already saw Doom take a loss to the Red Skull. We see the Mandarin trying to take out Captain America, and then some other thing is anyone could show up in this Avengers book, right? Whenever Avengers were trouble, whoever was on deck, they would just show up. And Paul Ryan does great things, right? So this was, I think, at this portion of Byrne's writing of the Avengers, he'd really hidden his stride. So it would have been great to see where he would have ended up after all this time on the book, because he was really getting into his groove on the book. And the Mandarin uses Black Ray, which freezes not only keeps him from seeing, but they capture the Wizard, right? But at the same time, as they always keep bickering, Doom just explodes. And then they realize, he said, no, not Doom. One of his accursed robots, the ones he uses for his lesser schemes, and it's been a robot all along. Has Doom ever been part of my plan? So this is one of the things that Byrne really played with a lot. That even in his own storylines, even in Acts of Vengeance from FF, that's like 300 to 350, has been Doombots, X-Men. Although I'm just going to deal with the ones that were revealed, right? Not the ones that are retconned. So we had Spider-Man in year 2000 when he fought Doom. We have Avengers 1.5. All these storylines that show that doesn't turn your story into a bad story that Doom sent a robot. It means that Doom really doesn't have interest. How great your story is, he's not really that interested in going and showing up and having to duke it out with the heroes for no good reason, right? Like, it makes no sense. He's above all of them, and it should be that way. So even if all of these stories are great, right? Especially Iron Man 150, that's definitely one that shouldn't be, that we wouldn't want to be. But would Doom go into a big brawl with Iron Man? But at the same time, would Dazzler be worth his time? At that period, would even the X-Men be worth his time? So, I mean, at least in the Micronauts, they picked up right where the FF left off, where Doom was stuck in Littleville, right? And Byrne picked up that story when he did Too Many Dooms. So, ultimately, you can have fun with the Doom bots. So, and it sounds like I'm doing something crazy, but you can see one of the people who's synonymous with Doom showed you that, hey, even in his most major storylines, Acts of Vengeance, Doom can not be worth Doom's time. Even in Walter Simonson's well-remembered storyline, Doom switches out of the fight. He's like, I switched out. I wonder if we could figure out when I switched out of the fight, leading us, the kids, to be like, when did he switch out of this fight? And the same for how many times has Doom been around here since FF40? That's the interesting part to play the game, is saying, are some of the Byrne ones Doom bots? So I figured in my head which are Doom bots. I think you should do the same too, because it's more fun to figure out which is a Doom bot and which is not. But I know for most fans, they're kind of like, hey, you can't make this important story of mine a Doom bot. But since we're here and I've been going wide, I'm gonna give you a surprise. Why am I gonna do this? I'm gonna show you why I said I wasn't gonna do this, but I'm gonna do it now. How the X-Men Doom is actually a Doom bot. Let's see, right? This issue was great. Like, I had this as a kid, and when the X-Men come in to run into Doom, now I want you to see this, and all of his defenses already take out the X-Men, and it takes out Colossus by himself. Alright, so this shows Doom at his best, right? So I'm going to jump to the next issue, right? Well, 2 issues over, because there's a subterfuge issue in between this. Nightcrawler is basically the hero of this story, right? Wolverine makes it first, right? Wolverine already knows it's a robot, so takes it out. But in here, Doom should have been able to basically burn Wolverine down to nothing, and him having even recover. But at this point, Wolverine had got so cool that he said no matter what, he keeps coming, right? When they already showed you that he can be burned to a crisp, right? And not recover, right? But at the same time, Nightcrawler silent bamfs. He can't silent bamf, right? He silent bamfs, pulls the curtain down, and they basically have taken Doom out. This is the weakest way to stop Doom, and basically scare him into Wolverine says that or you die, right? So this is what Chris Claremont said. This is a non-Doom moment, right? Where you have him can't do anything against Wolverine. Nightcrawler stops him with a curtain, and basically, threat of death, he frees Storm, but Storm loses all control of her powers. Right? I am free. She has a whole Phoenix moment, right? And the editors were like, hey, this book is rolling. Right? The time, space he has, for some reason now he can't do anything against her because she's reached her full potential. I'm sorry. This is not going well. Oh my god, I'm fucking... So, man, I ran out of steam on this. So, with that said, it's not really the best X-Men story, or at best Doom story. It is showing you that Wolverine and Nightcrawler could take out Doom by themselves, which really, it doesn't really work for me. But anyway, there's a lot of people that are upset that this is a Doombot, but it's just a wacky storyline. This doesn't really work. But anyway, that's it. Spin rack out.